Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Mental Toughness, Money Mindset, and a Strategically Leveraged Network. So, some people will do well in this new market, but for the majority of businesses, there will be a sense of urgency around bringing money in the door. Seasoned SMEs are digging deep to find the internal motivation to get up and going when the wolves are in the kitchen. This new market is going to be dominated by those who can adapt quickly and build a resource of internal and external skills to get going. During this session, participants will learn 3 tips for fast-tracking revenue that focuses on building a strategically leveraged network. When there is an urgency to bring money in the door, we need a working network, a resource network, and an affiliate network. The first step is to become aware of the skills that are needed to develop what Debbie refers to as strategically leveraged network can be learned. Debbie Adams is an award-winning entrepreneur and a 3-time published author, including Money Mindset, How Changing My Mind About Money Helped Me Succeed as an Entrepreneur. She helps entrepreneurs fast-track revenue so that they can take themselves off the front line and start doing the things today that they plan to do someday. As a forced, reluctant entrepreneur, this Newfoundlander had to hustle to make money because the wolves were in the kitchen. She learned early on that business success is directly linked to a leveraged network. Debbie has made Nova Scotia home since 2003 and is blessed to be able to spend a big part of her time in Newfoundland with her family. So thank you everybody for being here, and we'd like to welcome Debbie. So I'm going to pass it over to Debbie.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I appreciate that. And we're just going to jump right into this this webinar here. It's taken me a second to figure out how to advance the slide now. I should have checked that before. It isn't happening, Tanya.
I think if you go down to the bottom, there should be, like, near the bottom left-hand corner and click, it should work.
Yeah, I'm usually, I do PowerPoint from when yeah, we're good. I got it. Perfect. It's a little bit different when you're sharing a screen.
It is.
Okay, so I wanted to just start out by talking about how we focus upon what people can see in our Zoom view. And I know that I've seen some pretty funny things. But as I was looking around this morning at my view, and I'm in a new space this morning, I thought, oh I missed my backdrop. But then I was thinking about when I was growing up in rural Newfoundland, and if I was Zooming, I would have had to watch all of the clothes that were on the line because we didn't have a dryer, and we took the frozen clothes in from outside and strung them around the kitchen. And then my father would have been carving a moose at the kitchen table. So, you know, the things that we were embarrassed about become our badges of honor. Delighted that you're here. After you leave this event today, you should walk away with the understanding that a strategically leveraged network is what you need to run your business. And hopefully we'll have lots of tips for how to get that done. Generally, if we have a group of more than 12 people, the format is I do a little presentation, which I'm going to do now, and then we go into breakout rooms for a while and come back and we do what I call hot seat coaching. We're not going to do that today. The group is too small, so we're all going to stay together. I'm here for up to 90 minutes. I guess some of that time is gone now, but we'll just go right into coaching and chatting, and you can ask anything that you want. So that's where we're going to be. But let me tell you a little bit about networking. And if you stay with me till the end, who's ever here at the end, I'll tell you how you can win an hour of free coaching for your business. Tanya mentioned in the introduction that I'm a reluctant entrepreneur. I'm about as reluctant as anybody could be. And when I started in business 10 years ago this year, my business coach told me that I would be better off going to work for somebody else because I did not have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I started out with the best job in the world. I joined the military when I was 17. And after serving for 11 years, I developed an eye disorder. I was legally blind by the time I was 30, and I lost my military career. I did what most blue-collar people do, and that is I went to university. Graduated when I was 45, applied for 2,000 jobs. Nobody would hire a legally blind mechanic with no driver's license. So when my business coach said to me, why don't you start a business? I did a, what the bleep would I ever sell? And you can insert your own expletive. I do curse like an educated trooper. I really didn't know what it was that I could possibly sell, but I knew that I had so many barriers to traditional employment that starting a business was my only hope, or I could live on a disability pension, which is where I was, on a Canada pension disability. And so I started out selling what I knew how to do, and that was income tax. Then over the years, I've graduated from income tax to business coaching for, plumbers and carpenters and whoever came through the door. In 2015, I opened a training center. I kept that open for 3 years and realized the location was all wrong. And then I went into business coaching online in the Kajabi platform. And now I just do the online stuff and show up sometimes and speak to people. But what I figured out over the 10 years is that the person who does the best in money is somebody who has a strategy for building out a network. And I'm going to show you that in a graph right now and talk about that in a little bit more detail. My advancing the slides is really intermittent. All right. So whenever I see this picture, I always think back to when I first started out in business, entering a room full of people who were dressed in business casual or looked either bit fancy at all was extremely intimidating. I come from rural Newfoundland. My parents are, grade 5, 6 education, not used to being around people in this kind of a social setting. And I never had a reason to develop that skill. I always say when I went to university, I didn't even know anybody in my close inner circle who had ever been to university. So I was very intimidated to walk into a room full of people. But I understood the necessity, and I was fortunate to have a business coach who continued to stress that. My little model that I teach in my workshops around entrepreneurship, I talk about the levels of entrepreneurship, in these lovely E-terms, and just to talk about that eagerness stage. At the very early stages of business, you're naive about what you don't know. I mean, this is the bane of an adult's existence, is that we don't know what we don't know. So we assume we know everything we need to know. And that was me. I thought it was good enough that if I was good enough at income tax, then everybody would learn about that organically, I guess, and they would all come running through the door. So you can imagine how that worked out. I didn't just do income tax. I also do grant writing. I never tell people about that, but I do grant writing. I don't love grant writing, but it's one of those things that I do to make money during the slow periods. So I moved to the excitement stage after about a year in business when I picked up an opportunity to write a grant for somebody in Labrador, and I made $16,000 in 4 weeks. And how I interpreted that as a young entrepreneur was, I've made it. I've now arrived. I make $16,000 a month, and I'm doing pretty good in business. But over the next 8 months, I didn't make any money. All I heard was crickets, and I ended up closing out my year with $16,000 that year. And that was a pretty sad state to be. This next stage that we call exhaustion, I see it often in my clients when they could be in business up to 30 years, and they're never really making enough to get ahead. They keep going, they're living on cash flow, and they're maybe if they're in the construction industry, like a lot of my clients, they have to borrow money for startup costs in the spring. And this is the same thing year over year over year. And oftentimes I'll get my clients in and their spouses, and the spouse is trying to convince my client that they should go to work for somebody else, that owning a business is just not where it's at. And that red line is really a critical point in the life cycle of a business, because it's that red line that people need to get over in order to get to this place that I call strategically leveraged in your network. And I want to show you this in a little bit of a table. So remember back in that early stage, that eager stage, the people that you have around you are people just like you. They're people that are starting their business. You're not really well connected yet, and they're all trying to sell something. You go into a networking event, you're trying to sell to them, they're trying to sell to you. You collect a whole bunch of business cards. You have coffees with people, but it doesn't really translate into revenue of any kind. And then when you get to that excited stage, because you start making a little bit of money, you have folks like you, and you also have colleagues around you who are making a little bit of money too, and you can see yourself shift in your network. When you get to that frustrated stage, you've kind of given up networking at those events where you didn't make any money. So those folks that were kind of like they've dropped off. You don't really know what to do with them yet because you haven't had any instruction around that. And you've got colleagues, and maybe you'll find yourself on a Friday evening, at least my clients, popping into wherever it is that they pay their people, having a drink, talking about business, talking about the hustle. You're frustrated. You're not making enough money. You're trying to figure it out. That's the way the conversation goes, but you don't have the right people to talk to. You may have a few sages around you because along the way, you've realized that in order to access startup costs often for your season, you may have to have people around you who can foot that bill because you're not going to get money from a traditional lender. There's that red critical line again. And I'm going to say that there's a high percentage of business. I haven't done any of the research, but I'm going to say that go out on a limb and say 80% of businesses never get past that red line. When you move into this space, this strategically leveraged network, you have enough revenue coming in. As a matter of fact, you do more formalized systems, and you have all of those people around you. So folks like you understand that they have a value in your business, and they're probably telling other people about you. You'll have colleagues, and those colleagues are now interested in cross-marketing arrangements. You're very strategic about these cross-marketing arrangements, and you often, like I do now, as a business coach and trainer, I'll often partner up with people that are in the same industry as I am, and we'll send clients back and forth, and it's never accidental. And you have sages, and those are people that you can turn to when you need help. And I'm going to give you an example of how I had to do that in early days and how I figured out that this was a thing. A client had come to me who was interested in selling their business. I don't do that kind of work. In as much as I do income tax work and budgeting for sole proprietors, I'm not at that space, but I do know people. I am in the strategically leveraged network space, so I'm often the go-to person for people who are trying to find resources. So this person comes to me, they have a business that they want to sell, 19 employees, been in business 25 years, and I send that piece of business over to a broker. And this was prior to me understanding how I was supposed to make money off of this and develop this affiliate network. So I send this business over to a broker, and that's all I think about it. I'm glad that they're able to get together and that this person was able to get their needs met. Well, probably about 3 months later, I get a letter in the mail one day. It's a thank you card with a $50 Sobeys card in it. Now, the very clever me, I may have been naive and gullible when I started in business, but along the way I've dropped that. The very clever me knows that if I got a $50 gift card, I wonder what I should have gotten had I known better. That's my first thought. So I phone up two of the people in my network, two sages, a lawyer and an accountant, and I say, this is what happened. I got this $50 gift card. What should I have gotten? Is there a way for me to make money off of this transaction? And so they told me that transaction, the referral in and of itself, to send that business for assessment was probably worth $300 or $400. So the $50 gift card was okay, but not enough. But it was the second piece of that transaction where I should have been cut in on the deal, and that was when the business went for sale. So I got an education that afternoon about how if I sent business to other people and they were going to make money, I needed to cut myself into the deal in the early days. So I went back to that broker because that two-part process, just the first part had been done yet. The second part, the selling part, was not done. So in that first part, what the broker will do is do an assessment to see if there is a viable business. See, is there anything that people would pay money for? Because oftentimes we value what we have, you know, here, but the market will value it a lot lower. So it's not uncommon for people to go to get an evaluation done and come back with, you know, disappointed because there isn't anything to sell. But once that, in this particular case, that business was a viable business and it was going to go for sale and sell it in around $1.5 million mark. And I went back to that person and said, look, I'm green, I'm naive and gullible. I've certainly learned to, I don't hide behind that and pretend I don't know stuff that I don't know. But I know, I said, that you're a good man and you know what I don't know. You know, when you sent me that $50 gift card, which was generous to somebody like me, I guess the easiest way to say it is that people know when they're ripping you off. And so I just talked about the elephant in the room before it became an issue. And so he had me send him over an invoice for that first piece. And then he mentioned, you know, we agreed upon an amount. And for the second piece, when the business sells, it is not sold yet, for obvious reasons. When it sells, I'm going to get a percentage of his commission. And that puts him into the affiliate network piece. And now I have an affiliate revenue stream. So I do this referral piece often. It was the sages that told me how I should do it. It was those people who are way more successful than I am who showed me where there was opportunity. That's the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop the screen sharing in a second, but I host a Pan Atlantic Business Networking at last Friday of every month. No, the last Wednesday of every month, but because this week is Canada Day, it's going to be on Friday. So if you're interested in that, you can email me and I can send you the invite. And this is my email address. Remember, I mentioned to you that I was going to give away an hour of free coaching for anybody who's interested, whether you're on the call today or you're not on the call. If you email me, the first one that sends me an email and talks about something that you learned on this webinar today, you'll get 1 hour of free coaching. There. Tanya, I don't know if you want to watch the chat. I mentioned that I'm visually impaired, so I'm limited in what I can watch. Or people can just open up their mics and ask questions randomly. We have almost an hour.
Yeah, I would say that because we have so little people, everybody should turn their mics on and have a discussion. I think that that's the best thing. If you really want to ask a question in the chat, go right ahead. I'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, I say go right ahead.
Perfect.
Hi, Debbie. It's Victoria. How are you?
Hi, Victoria. Good, thank you.
Good. I've enjoyed so many of your sessions before, and I love hearing you talk about your story and how you've evolved over the years and the lessons that you've learned. And my position is a little bit different, where I'm not really an entrepreneur. Yeah. I'm not looking to sell anything. I'm trying to give away something for free, sort of thing. So I'm on a government project. It's an online learning, and there's been a lot of focus on online learning since COVID. But my usual way is visiting people, and that has been completely cut off. with it, whether it be going to conferences and seminars and just getting the word out there. I've done a couple of webinars with other part of my network that I've done, but I feel like I'm bugging them now, and I'm looking at ways of expanding that network to talk about this free resource that I have. But I don't know what I don't know in how do I get out there. Any suggestions?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we have a lot of time, maybe you could tell everybody what you do before I.
Sure, why not? So I'm the adoption manager for the skillspassnl.com Government of Newfoundland Labrador Learning Portal. So if you have ever had a question where you're dealing with government in their application process, their inspection process, or operational processes, this is the website that you would go to for free to learn from those industry leaders and those inspectors of what you need to do in order to get your application, your inspection, to maintain operational standards. So the heart of the program is free education to elevate the knowledge level across the province. And my job is to go and talk about it and to get people aware of it, and hopefully get them excited about it, to get them involved into it and to see the benefits that it can be. And you use catchphrases like an educated society is an elevated society, a knowledgeable worker is a invested worker, a shared responsibility within an organization makes the organization stronger, and those types of things. But it's getting that audience in front of those people that once they hear about it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic, and it's free. And given that the fact that more than 80% of the businesses within Newfoundland and Labrador are less than 20 employees, having access to resources for training when you don't have that financial liquidity that a lot of bigger businesses have is a real challenge. So opening it up to these and saying that, hey, it's free, it's something for you to do, and that will only benefit you, is definitely a hook into it. But it had much success in the very first year. We've been online now for a little over 14 months, and but since COVID hit, it's really had forced me to rethink my platforms.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to say that a lot of my clients are your clients, but I charge for what, none of what I do is free. Very little of what I do is free. Okay, here's like a full transparency here. So I have a foot in each canoe. I'm a journeyed tradeswoman. It's one of the things that opens a certain door for me. And I have a university education. I'm a mechanic who's been to law school, so I have a little bit of knowledge. And when I'm around people who are university educated, that door opens for me as well. And I have a tendency to push the fact that I'm a tradeswoman to the back burner so I don't get judged, because there's all kinds of judgment across those strata, right? So I would say that if you're looking to educate the less formally educated set, you need to get buy-in from somebody in there in order to sell to them. You need to get somebody. I know that, I mentioned affiliate network, so I'll tell you right away that as a training business, when you're a training business, you could bootstrap or piggyback on what I do as long as I got paid for it. Just saying. That's an opportunity. The other thing you need to do is have somebody who's selling that clearly represents the people that you're trying to sell to. Because there's a barrier when you're the person without information, you're always running the risk of looking stupid to the person who has the information. So one of the things that I had to get over early on was this not wanting to look stupid. So it's really important that I have a high trust. I have high trust with my market because I've been there. And the reason I tell my story in the early days, and not in early days, early in the presentation, is because it connects me with people. Telling people about cutting up a moose on the kitchen table, my clients automatically say, "Oh my God, she's like us. She's like us." And then the wall goes down, the veil goes down. I tell them what I didn't know, because I'm all about the education of the people that are, at-risk adults. And so I want them, they are one learning objective away from a better life. So you need to have the right person as your point person, and you need to really earn their trust.
I am.
Or you can hire me and I'll charge you for the real meat.
We'll talk about that, Debbie.
Down in this corner, we have Cheryl Crudson. She is actually married to my cousin, but she works with Victoria, and I just think this is like wild. So how nice is that? Roger, do you have a question? I know you have to leave early.
No. Just a second. I should probably raise my hand. Can you hear me?
No, yes, and listen. One of my rules of networking is that you should never leave a networking event without anybody knowing what you do. So first tell us, Roger, what it is that you do.
Oh, I'm the, well, on a voluntary basis, I'm the president of the Learning Disabilities Association of New Brunswick. We have pretty good contracts with the government of New Brunswick to do psych ed assessments on learning disabilities. In other words, the diagnostic side of who might have a disability, and that in turn helps government bring them into some of their programs, etc., or not. As well, we have tutoring. We offer the Barton Tutoring Program, whereby we have a network of tutors in different parts of the province, and we have young students who have learning disabilities, and we help them out, either dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, etc., the different types of learning disabilities. So that's basically my voluntary work, and I enjoy it quite a bit. Sit on a board of 12 people, and we have about 2.5 staff in the office, and we do what we have to do. Basically, COVID hasn't helped a whole lot in that we've had to develop operational plans and had to take all the precautionary measures to make sure that people feel safe, etc. And I think we're getting there. And then I'm involved with the chamber as a volunteer as well, Government Affairs Committee. I'm a retired public servant. I was a senior executive in the government of New Brunswick for close to 37 years, not all of which as a senior executive, but for a few years I was up there and got to meet wonderful people and travel the world, as one of my responsibilities was international relations. So there you go. And I'm a former professional tennis player, so I can always fall back on that for networking, etc. But from what you were saying, Debbie, and what I was listening to, as I get older, I start to believe more and more in the common good. What we do in terms of our values and principles is at the end of the day to help our surroundings, to help our networks, to help the people we interact with, and basically to help Mother Earth be better. And sometimes, you charge, sometimes you don't. For the most vulnerable, for those who have challenges, there's got to be an exchange. However, I believe in that. I've given tennis lessons in exchange of cookies. All right. Well, there's an exchange. It's healthy. It's very healthy. And it took me a while to realize that. But money can be part of it. Products could be part of it. Bartering could be part of it, etc. There's that element to it. It is healthy. But it took me a while to realize it. I figured, giving, and I noticed that I coached university tennis a couple of years ago. We went to the Nationals during the Rogers Cup. And I did it all for free. And I learned from that. I learned that some of the players were just taking me for granted. And I gave a lot of hours for free. And I realized partway through that it was unhealthy for me. And I think it was unhealthy for the players because some were taking advantage. So I changed my ways on that, learned from it, and, asked for pay because in this case it was appropriate. I didn't get to renew the contract, by the way, but still I learned from it.
Yeah.
And there you go. So a little bit of everything.
No, I like the topic and I'm glad you brought it up. So, I wrote a book called Money Mindset, and I'm passionate about the topic of unconscious bias against making money. And where I come from, there's a lot of this. So if you've read anything about Napoleon Hill and law of attraction and money mindset, you'll know that there are people that have no trouble making money, no trouble charging market value for their products and services. And then you'll have people who struggle with charging what they should be charging. You'll have women who were conditioned to be doormats, who can't charge for anything. And I have clients that come to me, or somebody else will sponsor them, come to me, and they'll be giving away hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of seamstress work, but they won't be able to buy groceries because they can't charge for what they need. So I'm going to say a few things. I have built a line item for gifting into my business. So when I first started out, and I'll use the tax business as an example, sole proprietor taxes start at $500. That's the same as H&R Block would charge. And then if you have to do accounting behind that, it's about $60 an hour. So if somebody comes with a Sobeys bag filled with receipts, they're going to be close to $1,000. When I first started out, I knew that only took me a few hours. And oh my heavens, I was coming over from being, first of all, hard to serve as a military person, and then only ever been around employees. So if you were making $20 an hour in Atlantic Canada, you were doing fairly good. And here I was having to charge $1,000 for a couple of hours work. And I really struggle with that. Really struggle with it. But it's that exchange of value, right? The market has said that the value of that tax return is $1,000. When I'm not exchanging time, I'm exchanging value. So this is, if you draw this over into your tennis, for example, you're allowing, the thing that you're giving the person is an opportunity to take their ability onto the world stage in a big way. It has a lot of value. You might say, well, I only gave them 5 hours of my time, and $20 an hour is pretty good. If you're a laborer, it may be pretty good. But if I'm opening the doors in coaching, I'm opening the doors for people to make a lot of revenue, then I need to get paid a value that's commensurate with what I'm giving them. But at the same time, the Newfoundlander in me wants to be a good person, wants to give back. So I find ways to do that. I'm not charging to be here today, and I'm giving away a shit ton of free information. I have 20 tax returns that I give away to low-income seniors who need to do their taxes so they can continue to get their, social benefits. I give 20 of those away a year. I give it out to service organizations. When they're gone, they're gone. I've had to put a boundary in and say that I'm a business. And when I show up as CEO of my business, I'm charging you market value. When I show up as Debbie the Newfoundlander with the big heart, I'm giving away 20 tax returns. So there has to be a balance, because you'll end up cannibalizing your own business. I meet a lot of good people out there who cannot make ends meet, and the first thing I want them to do is double their prices, and they cringe at the thought, and they're getting ripped off. And I like to use the example of a friend of mine from Waterloo, Ontario, who went to Newfoundland and bought 100 quilts from some elderly lady who was very good at making quilts, and she brought them back and made 10 times what she paid for them. And it burns my ass when I see people ripped off. So I hope that touched on some of what you were talking about.
It certainly does, Debbie. That's very good value, and it's what I learned from my experience in the tennis world, but also in other worlds as well, and not being afraid to say that what I have to offer has value, and that, there's a dollar sign next to it, or there's an exchange of some next, depending on who you're helping or supporting. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Jamie.
Hi there. I'm sorry. I'm very, very late. Something came up, and I'm sorry. I thought I'd join in now, so I certainly don't interrupt any momentum you have.
Oh, no, you're not interrupting any momentum. So it's too bad that you didn't get the introduction, but late is better than never. Do you have a question or anything that's front of mind for you right now? Are you ready to get back to business and get going, or?
Yeah, it's a unique position that we have worked, like we are an association ourselves, so every single real estate professional in the province belong to our association. So this is our second week that our office is open. We've been working virtually, and probably the biggest thing that we've been working creatively to continue to serve the folks that are our members. It's making sure that we don't burn ourselves out. Like, that's the key of looking around self-care, so that it's been such a roller coaster with still being open, so to speak, even during the worst part of it, and not exhausting your team and staff, because you need to do it, but at the same time you don't want to exhaust your team. And so that's been the thing I've been very mindful of late.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just because I'm a curious person, what's the market like in New Brunswick?
The supply of homes, like the actual homes that are for sale, is at a historical low. And it was that before COVID. So what you're seeing is, for the first time in a decade, is regular multiple offer situations. So it's not like a drastic increase in the average sale price, but it's going up. Fredericton in particular has been more acute. And I'm not sure if people are a little reluctant to sell, but it's also the economy. People may not be wanting to sell their homes because they're just hoping their jobs are still there, or, but people are buying, and they're certainly, most people are getting the listed price or above right now. We have a tremendous number of people entering the profession even during this pandemic, and it may be people who've lost their jobs and they need a second career. So it's a very unusual time. Actually, COVID-19, from our budget point of view, has actually given us more revenues than we expected. So it's a very unusual time. It's one of the few sectors that it still seems to be doing well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know if that's across the board. Like I know Nova Scotia has a market that's very similar to yours. I think I heard yesterday there was about 3 months of inventory on the market now. Newfoundland has 3 or 4 years worth of inventory.
I think that's changing a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, people seem to be putting their houses on the markets, and then it's selling within weeks.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
We,
wonderful.
but you know, there's a threshold, of course, right? Like the higher, you know, over 750 are not moving at all for years, for 3 years.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
And here in Nova Scotia, over 500 is not moving quickly.
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So yeah, making sure people don't burn out. I want to just touch on, I think it benefits everybody, the like networking online. And I think, Victoria, it was you that kind of mentioned it in the beginning. For me, my challenge as a visually impaired woman who doesn't drive is when I walk into a room filled with bodies, I'm at risk of having a panic attack because, you know, I have tunnel vision. It's like this, and people are going everywhere. And we don't have universal design in most of our older buildings. So there's nowhere for us to tuck out of the way to get a little bit of time to regroup as a woman with a disability. And I have mental health challenges to go along with that, but you would understand, Roger. So when COVID happened, it was the best thing that could ever happen for my business, because first of all, I only ever network when the strategy I put in place before COVID was I would only network if I was at the front of the room and people were listening to me, because I could not navigate a room full of people. So I did that a few years back. And then when COVID happened, and I could very quickly get out in the webinar world and chat with people where I have the reins. I control what gets talked about, and I'll be just seeding, dropping all the nuggets about what I do all throughout. Now everybody's moving back into the workplace, and I'm trying to figure out how it is that I can keep their attention online on the screen. And people don't want to give up screens 100%, but they're definitely getting a little bit of Zoom fatigue.
Yeah.
So if you can learn to be interesting on the screen, like Saturday night, I had a comedian come in, and I did a networking event for a group of people that was private invite only. And I know I've been invited to stuff for the real estate people and the mortgage brokers. And so we were all having, beers and shooting the shit and being social, but business always comes up.
And I think quarterly engagements with, I think instead of having that 3 levels.
Debbie, one of our guests who had to leave said he would appreciate to learn more on maintaining the networks. So would you be able to talk a little bit about that? Because then I'll share this with him after.
Yeah. So maintaining a network is extremely important, because most of the network that I've developed is a reciprocal kind of relationship. There's quid pro quo that's going on. There's very strategic connecting of people. So I'm relevant in my network. For example, back to Roger, and then I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl because she hasn't had an opportunity yet. But Roger works with clients who have executive functioning challenges, right, in your work. Well, I have a colleague, you may know him, Keith Gellhorn, who's an ADHD coach in Nova Scotia, and he works with clients in entrepreneurship and post-secondary education, clients who have ADHD and other, they have psych ed assessment and they have needs that they have to reach out for services. So whenever I'm out and about, I'll always mention his name. It's not accidental that I'll throw that in when I see somebody here that I think he should meet. So Tanya, back to your question. If you make yourself valuable to your network, they're not going to forget about you. And you build in that reciprocity. And sometimes it takes a conversation to say, I know that Keith mentions me I'm the money gal, and I know that Keith does his thing. When we're anywhere, we mention one another. And dozens of other people, not just Keith, but so one of the ways of maintaining your network without burning out is to keep yourself valuable to your network, which often means giving, not taking. So, Cheryl, you have
I think
floor,
I
girl.
think that was a great point right there, Debbie. You have to give, but I think in all interactions there's always a give and take, and we're always, the memorable ones, they always leave some kind of an impression with you, and it has to be mutually beneficial. And I think you're very good at that.
Thank
So.
you.
I do think LinkedIn works as well, though. And I was looking for Roger and I couldn't find him.
Oh, no, you're not going to find me anywhere on social
I
media.
didn't think.
No. But the other thing that I would add to maintaining networks, et cetera, and Debbie, you said, showing value, et cetera, is love, but we're talking about compassion, gratitude, and forgiveness. I always think of those three virtues of compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude as a leadership style, as a way of going about your business, and doing everything with love and kindness, I think goes a long way. Sincerity, and people sense that. People sense your authenticity. People sense your genuineness, and that can go a long way, very long way, in tangible terms. And I try every day to be a better person. And when I connect with those virtues, when I connect with those way of living, I feel good about myself at the end of the day. And when I do, I think others feel good around me. And I think that's part of maintaining networks.
100%. So you've touched on servant leadership, bringing that, and I knew you were going to go there as soon as you said interested in greater good and all of this kind of stuff. I knew you were going to go there, and I think it's a fantastic place to be. When it comes to generating revenue, you're going to have people out there that may be tipping the scale toward the narcissistic side, right? And they can make a ton of money and not do any of that stuff, and it works for them. But I have a business, and I'm assuming that you have an organization where one of your stated values is servant leadership, is all of this other stuff as well, which is a tangible asset in your business. I have a stated value of profit first because I am a profit business, but not to the point where I'm going to sacrifice all of these other values. So it is possible to build a business where they call it the 3 Ps, people, profit, and planet, and to have all of that in your business. And I think it's fabulous if you have a strategy for that.
It was great chatting with you and listening to you and everybody. I just think this was so worthwhile. I was telling my colleagues here, I was like, you guys will have to go listen, because they were in a meeting and they're like, oh, okay, great. So thank you so
Awesome.
much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll chat soon.